It was a cool, crisp morning in Washington, D.C., early November 2024. The world was already buzzing with rumors of a secret summit, but no one expected Ibrahim Traoré, the young and rising leader from West Africa, to be invited to the White House. The invitation itself was a shock, a symbol that the world was watching him closely. Traoré arrived quietly, his heart pounding beneath his calm exterior. He wasn't a polished politician from a wealthy nation, but a man of the people, speaking with the accent that carried the stories of his homeland. His journey wasn't easy. Years of fighting corruption, poverty, and conflict back home. Now, he was standing at the doorstep of power. Inside the grand room, the air was thick with tension. World leaders gathered, whispering and watching. Traoré knew he had to represent not just his country, but the hopes of millions. Yet even as he prepared his speech, he felt a nervousness he hadn't felt before. This meeting could change everything, or end in humiliation. As Traoré stepped up to the podium, his accent thick and unpolished, a ripple of surprise swept the room. Then came the unexpected, a burst of laughter. It was Donald Trump, chuckling openly, his voice cutting through the silence. "What is that accent?" he said with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. The laughter spread quickly, sharp and cold. Some in the room smirked, others exchanged uneasy glances. Traoré felt the weight of every stare, the sting of being seen as an outsider. For a moment he almost lost his breath. But then, something inside him ignited. He straightened his shoulders, looked Trump squarely in the eye and spoke, slow, steady, with a voice filled with quiet power. The words were simple, but they hit like thunder. "My accent tells the story of resilience, the story you refuse to understand." The room went silent. The laughter died, eyes widened. Trump's smirk faded into something unreadable. The silence that followed was louder than any speech. The crowd, once mocking, now sat frozen. The cameras captured every second of the shift, from disbelief to deep respect. Traoré's words weren't just a comeback, they were a mirror reflecting truths no one wanted to face. He continued, each word building a bridge from his homeland to the halls of power. He spoke of sacrifice, of a people who refused to give up despite poverty and war. He told stories of mothers who walked miles for water, of children dreaming beyond their villages. The crowd listened, some with tears in their eyes. Even Donald Trump seemed caught off guard. His usual bravado cracked, replaced by a hesitant nod. The moment wasn't just political, it was human. And for many watching live around the world, it was a call to wake up, to see leaders like Traoré not as outsiders, but as voices of hope. After the silence, Traoré's eyes scanned the room. World leaders, journalists, even security guards, all holding their breath. Behind his calm, his heart raced. He wasn't just speaking for himself. He was carrying the hopes of millions from his country, many of whom had never seen this kind of attention on their struggles. Back home, families sat by their radios, glued to the live broadcast. Mothers held their children tight, whispering prayers. For them, this moment was proof that their pain was finally being heard on a global stage. But Traoré knew the battle was far from over. His accent, once a target of ridicule, now carried the weight of a nation's dignity. Every word was a reminder. Leaders from small or poor countries were not less deserving of respect. They had stories that mattered, lives that mattered. In that room, the laughter had turned into something else, a shared recognition that power doesn't come from polish or privilege, but from truth. As Traoré continued, his mind flashed to a memory, a young boy in a dusty village, listening to stories of freedom fighters and heroes who never gave up, despite everything. That boy was him. He remembered the nights without electricity, the hunger, the fear, but also the hope, the promise that change was possible. His voice grew stronger, weaving these memories into his speech. He spoke of unity, not division, of strength born from struggle, not from easy victories. His accent became a song, a rhythm of resilience that no one could ignore. The crowd was no longer just listening, they were feeling. A few wiped tears secretly, others sat silently, overwhelmed. Traoré's words weren't just speeches, they were lifelines reaching across oceans and cultures. Then came the moment no one expected. Donald Trump stood slowly, his face serious now. The laughter was gone. In that charged silence, he extended his hand. The room held its breath again. Traoré looked at the hand, then into Trump's eyes. There was no mockery now, only an unspoken respect. Traoré shook it firmly. That handshake wasn't just a gesture, it was a turning point. Proof that sometimes even the hardest barriers can break down with courage and truth. Outside, the world erupted in conversation. Social media exploded with clips of the moment. Some called it historic, others called it unexpected, but all agreed on one thing: Ibrahim Traoré had changed the narrative. As the video of that moment spread like wildfire across the internet, voices from every corner of the world began to rise. People from small villages, bustling cities, and quiet towns all shared their stories that had been ignored for too long. In homes thousands of miles away, families gathered around glowing screens. Tears flowed as they saw someone who looked like them, sounded like them, standing tall against power. Traoré's words echoed deep within hearts hungry for hope and justice. His accent wasn't a weakness, it was a banner of pride. Every syllable reminded people that their struggles mattered, their dreams were valid. Children whispered to their parents, "Maybe one day I can be like him." It wasn't just politics anymore, and it was personal. The world was waking up to a truth long buried beneath prejudice and misunderstanding. And it all started with one sentence that changed everything. Few knew what Traoré carried inside. Behind his steady gaze and composed voice was a man who had seen too much pain, friends lost to violence, families torn apart by injustice. That day, before the speech, he had been awake all night, thinking about those he represented. He carried their stories in his heart, their hopes on his shoulders. When laughter met his accent, it wasn't just a jab at his voice. It was a reminder of years of struggle. But instead of breaking, Traoré chose to shine brighter. His courage wasn't loud or flashy. It was quiet, steady, like a candle in the dark. And in that moment, it lit up a room and a world desperate for change. Later that evening, back in his hotel room, Traoré received a letter. It was from a mother in his country, a woman he had never met but whose story he carried every day. She wrote of her children, their dreams, and the harsh realities they faced. She thanked him for standing up and speaking out. "Your words gave us strength," she wrote. "We see hope now." Traoré read the letter slowly, the weight of her gratitude filling the room. In that simple note, he found the reason for every struggle, every challenge. He wasn't just a leader, he was a voice for millions who couldn't speak, and that truth gave him the strength to keep fighting, no matter what. The next morning, international news outlets ran headlines about the unforgettable exchange. Some praised Traoré's courage, others debated the significance of his words. But what couldn't be denied was the ripple effect spreading worldwide. In classrooms across Africa, teachers paused their lessons to play the clip. Students watched, mouths slightly open, as someone from their own world stood up and made history. Teachers whispered, "This is what leadership looks like." Meanwhile, in cities far from Traoré's homeland, people debated and reflected on their own biases. How often had they ignored voices simply because they sounded different? His speech was making people uncomfortable, but it was also making them think. For Ibrahim Traoré, it wasn't about fame or applause. It was about opening eyes, even if just a little, to a reality too many had turned away from. Despite the public attention, Traoré retreated to a quiet corner of the embassy after the summit. Alone, he let his guard down for the first time in days. He pulled out the letter from the mother and read it again. His hands trembled slightly. The weight of leadership, the hopes of millions. It was overwhelming. But in that stillness, he felt a deep resolve. He whispered to himself, "This is just the beginning." Outside, the city lights flickered, but inside that small room, a fire was burning. A fire of determination, courage, and unyielding hope. The summit was far from over. Traoré knew the real work was only starting. Back home, corruption and poverty still gripped his people. Powerful interests resisted change. But now he had a voice that could not be ignored. He planned to use it to fight harder, push further, and never forget the mothers, children, and millions counting on him. His accent, once laughed at, was now a symbol of strength. Every day he would remind the world, and himself, that true leadership comes from standing firm in your truth, no matter the cost. As days passed, Ibrahim Traoré's inbox flooded with letters and messages from people all over the world. Mothers, students, soldiers, and even strangers wrote to share how his courage had touched their lives. One letter stood out, from a young girl in a remote village. She wrote, "Your words gave me hope to finish school. My village believes in me now." Tears welled up in Traoré's eyes. He realized his speech had sparked more than respect. It had lit a fire in countless hearts. Each letter reminded him why his journey mattered. Behind every struggle was a person waiting for someone to believe in them, to be their voice when they had none. But with admiration came heavy expectations. Some critics questioned if Traoré could truly bring change. Could a man from a small country really influence the global stage? Traoré felt the pressure like a mountain on his chest. Every step forward was watched, every decision scrutinized. But he remembered the faces of those children and mothers who depended on him. With quiet strength, he decided that no criticism would stop him. He wasn't perfect, but he was committed to lifting up those who had been silenced for too long. One night, alone in his room, Traoré looked out over the city skyline. The lights twinkled like stars, distant but beautiful. His mind wandered back to the dusty roads of his childhood village, the place where dreams felt fragile and far away. He felt a deep ache for those who still suffered, who still needed him. But alongside the ache was a fierce hope. That night, he made a silent promise to carry their stories forward, no matter the cost. Tears rolled down his cheeks, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming weight of responsibility and the powerful hope that change was possible. The day of the follow-up summit arrived. Traoré stood before an even larger crowd, their eyes fixed on him. This time, no laughter, only anticipation. He spoke not just of struggle, but of unity, of bridges built between cultures and nations. His accent still carried the echoes of his homeland, but now it was a voice transformed by courage and conviction. He told stories of mothers, children, and warriors, people who refused to give up despite impossible odds. Every word was a thread, weaving a tapestry of hope and strength. When he finished, the room erupted in applause, genuine, heartfelt, and long-lasting. Even the harshest critics stood to honor a man who had changed the narrative forever. After the speech, cameras caught a moment that quickly went viral. Donald Trump, once the loudest skeptic, quietly approached Traoré. Without words, he nodded deeply, a silent acknowledgement of respect and understanding. In that gesture, the world saw what words sometimes fail to capture. True leadership is not about loud voices or polished speeches. It's about courage, humility, and standing firm in your truth. For millions watching, it was a moment of healing, a reminder that even the greatest divides can be bridged by honesty and respect. As the summit closed, Traoré looked out over the crowd one last time. He felt the weight of history, but also the spark of a new beginning. His story was no longer just his own. It was a story shared by millions who dared to dream of a better world. To you watching this, remember, change starts with a single voice brave enough to speak. If Traoré's journey moved you, let his courage inspire your own. Please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Your voice matters. Together we can build a world where every story is heard and every voice is respected. Thank you for watching.